Hi everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
So today we're starting our story article for this month. It's The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Have you read any of his stuff?
No, but I'm frightened by the title, The Graveyard Book.
Yeah.
Sounds creepy. No, I've never read any Neil Gaiman, but I know lots of people, especially my friends who like science fiction, fantasy, that kind of
Bit of horror.
Yeah, they really like him. So maybe it's just a case of picking one of his books and actually sitting down to read it. So I know he's got a lot of fans.
American Gods is a fun place to start.
They've made some of his into television shows.
Yeah, Neverwhere's been a TV show.
Okay.
That's a pretty fun one. He's written a lot of different stuff about different kinds of things. So there's a lot of different ways you can get into it.
Okay.
But this story is a bit about a graveyard. How do you feel about walking through a graveyard?
Sure.
Yeah, it's not something that bothers you?
No, absolutely not.
Where I grew up, there's a church at the top of the road where I grew up.
Yep.
And it's the sort of place where if it was daytime, you'd be fine. At nighttime, you might think to yourself, you know what, I'm not going to go through the church in the graveyard, even though it's a bit quicker. I'll just take an extra minute to go around the other side of the road.
Interesting. They are places that a lot of people might feel a little creepy about on a dark night, even if there's a full moon or something like this. There was a church near my school when we grew up, and apparently if you went there after midnight, you would see ghosts. Apparently a vampire was buried over there.
Wow.
Well, we did sneak out of bed. We did sneak down there and we didn't see anything.
Nothing.
We just got cold and wet feet.
Okay, that's the reason not to do it. But what's going to happen in this graveyard? Let's check out day one of our story.
Reading The Graveyard Book. One misty October night in an unnamed English town, something terrible happens. A man creeps into a narrow house near a graveyard and kills the family there. However, the youngest child, only a year and a half old, wanders into the graveyard before the evil man can catch him. The residents of the graveyard take the boy in and name him Nobody Owens. Nobody's new graveyard family gives him a nickname, Bod, and the freedom of the graveyard, which lets him see ghosts and learn supernatural skills. For example, they teach Bod how to hide himself from the living people who visit the graveyard. His life is strange, but he is loved and cared for by the ghosts and someone special. His name is Silas. Silas describes himself as neither living nor dead. He can leave the graveyard and make contact with the outside world, which lets him take care of practical matters. This is how Bod is fed and clothed.
So the article begins with a bit of atmosphere to set the scene. One misty October night in an unnamed English town, something terrible happens.
Oh my gosh, I'm already getting a little bit nervous. But this is a great way to begin a scary story, isn't it?
Indeed, on a misty night. A night that is misty has a lot of mist. That's fog. It's water that's in the air in such an amount that it makes it kind of thick, difficult to see through. You often see this kind of, it's almost like steam rising up off rivers or lakes and getting in the air and sort of flowing around, a bit like smoke and that kind of
or
thing.
Like walking through a cloud.
Yeah, exactly. It's all very low down next to a body of water. So you often see that it's often either early in the day before the sun burns it off or kind of late at night sort of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
We could say, as an example, the hikers began their long walk on a misty morning just before dawn. Of course, misty is the adjective describing the weather. Mist is the noun. That's the actual stuff in the air.
There you go. So yeah, the misty morning, and then the sun would go up, the air would warm, and that water would go away. But yes, before dawn, that's when you might expect it. Or if it's a horror book, a scary story, if it's night, it would probably be misty because it just makes things a little scarier because, of course, you can't see things very well through the mist. And then we read, a man creeps into a narrow house near a graveyard and kills the family there.
Ew.
Wow, this story really starts off. It just goes, doesn't it? So already something horrible has happened. A man, of course, we would call this person a murderer because this person has gone into this house near a graveyard and has killed the people who live there. This wasn't, fighting in a war, or those people weren't trying to hurt him. He just wanted to go in, maybe steal their money. Maybe one of them woke up, or he just doesn't like them, and he killed them. Now, he did this very quietly, of course, because we read that he creeped into that house. When you creep, it's kind of like the word sneak, S-N-E-A-K. You're moving very quietly. You're being careful not to make a lot of noise when you take your steps. If you're trying to walk around your house in the middle of the night and you know that people are sleeping and you don't want to wake them up, you might be creeping around or something like that. Or you're doing it because you're doing something bad and you don't want to get people's attention. But the idea with creeping is you are moving quietly and probably a little bit slowly too, as you don't want to make noise.
And this happens in a narrow house, okay? Narrow it's a tight house. It's not a big, wide house. It's narrow. There's not much room. It's probably quite tall, but not wide. You might have trouble. You have to go sideways through the door. There's not much space between the two houses on either side. It's that sort of house. For example, we could say Taipei has many narrow streets which are hard to drive down.
Yeah,
There's not much room for even a scooter, never mind a car.
Very true. Some of the streets are so narrow, I worry, like what if there's a fire? A fire truck couldn't get down these narrow streets. But it is a problem when you live in a big crowded city. And in this case, this house was near a graveyard. We've mentioned this before. A graveyard is a place often near a church or some kind of religious building where they put the bodies of dead people or the remains of dead people. If you think of the typical graveyard from a horror movie or from Halloween, it will have these stones with people's names and dates of when they were born and died, maybe some words about them. And to make it really creepy, it's misty. Some of the stones are kind of tilted. Everything looks very old, and there's probably some trees there. And you get the feeling that behind any of the stones could be ghosts or vampires or something there to hurt you. But of course, most graveyards are not filled with ghosts. They're often filled with, of course, the remains of the people, maybe some flowers and things like that.
Okay, so a man has gone into a house, he's killed the family.
Terrible.
But not everybody. We see in the article, however, the youngest child, only a year and a half old, wanders into the graveyard before the evil man can catch him.
Wow.
Okay, so someone escapes, basically.
Yeah, very young, almost a baby.
Yeah,
but old enough.
Barely walk.
Old enough to walk, but was smart enough or lucky enough to get out of the house. But basically, as you said, someone survived this murderer's attack.
And they did that by wandering into the graveyard. So to wander, this is a movement verb. It means to move around without really having a place that you're aiming to get to. You're kind of going in one direction, stopping for a bit, turning back, walking around in a few different directions. You sort of could be doing it to enjoy what's there. You might wander around a shop, not really looking for something to buy, but just seeing what they have. You could wander around a city, checking out what you find. Not going, we'll go here, then here, then here. No, we'll just walk, we'll look, we will wander. For example, we could say, Ellie wandered around her apartment looking for her glasses. She's not really checking every room in an order. She's just going, are they here? No, I'll walk around a bit more. Maybe they're here. So what happens to this boy?
Well, you would think someone might come along, like the police might find the boy, save him, and that's the end of the story. Well, no, that's not the end of the story, and nothing as boring as that happens. As we read on, it says, the residents of the graveyard take the boy in and name him Nobody Owens. Now, the weird thing about that sentence is his name, Nobody Owens, is the most normal thing about that sentence because, of course, there are residents in this graveyard and they take the boy in. They kind of make him part of their family. They adopt him, which would be another word we would use in English. And yeah, residents of the graveyard. Now, that's very unusual because a resident is a person who lives in a particular place, in a particular home or a building or a neighborhood, even a city. If you live in a place, you are a resident of that place. You live there. That's your home. People don't live in graveyards. That's very, very unusual. Unless, are we talking about ghosts here?
This is a Neil Gaiman book, so it could be ghosts, it could be strange creatures,
vampires.
It could be just people who happen to live there.
Oh, okay.
He does all kinds of fun stuff with his books.
Right, but I am correct in saying that graveyards don't usually have residents who are alive.
Yes, we're mostly talking about the dead.
Yes,
so there
exactly.
we go.
So as I said, his name, which is weird, is the most normal thing in that sentence.
Yeah, but these residents do take in nobody Owens.
That's nice.
And as Mike said, they adopt him. That means the same thing. They decide they're going to look after him and give him shelter. We use take somebody in usually when this person, or it could be an animal, it doesn't belong to you in the first place. It's not your child or pet. You didn't choose to have it, but you decide out of kindness, you're going to look after it.
Exactly. And often it's kind of an emergency situation, right? It might be you find a sick cat or dog. There's no one around. This animal obviously needs help. So you take it in. You might adopt it and keep it as part of your family, but certainly you're going to give it shelter and protection and make sure nothing bad happens. Well, back to the story. Nobody's new graveyard family gives him a nickname, Bod. All right. So they know him as Nobody. Nobody Owens, but they shorten Nobody down to Bod. And the freedom of the graveyard. Notice those quotes around that in the capital letters in freedom graveyard. That tells us that this is like an official name or a title, like president of the company or president of America or whatever. They give him freedom of the graveyard. This is probably some kind of right or law that lets him do what he wants. It says, which lets him see ghosts and learn supernatural skills. So he is a human person, a human boy, but they also kind of give him some of these special powers that the other residents of the graveyard, who I guess are ghosts or monsters of some kind, because they are giving him the ability to learn supernatural skills. Well, something natural comes from nature. You're born with it. It's something you expect to find in humans and animals, right? We have a natural ability to walk on two legs. Most birds have a natural ability to fly. If something is supernatural, it's kind of like a superpower. It's basically something you wouldn't expect to find in that person. And when we use this term, we're often talking about things from kind of fantasy stories, maybe science fiction, but generally things, that we might consider scary, spooky, supernatural creatures, might be werewolves, vampires, ghosts, and monsters of that kind of thing. Or even using magic. You can say that's supernatural as well, because it isn't something that most people or animals get just from nature. It's supernatural.
So what's an example of this? We see in the article, for example, they teach Bod how to hide himself from the living people who visit the graveyard. Of course,
it's just like a big tree. He stands behind a big tree.
I guess he can maybe sort of just fade out of their attention.
Oh, supernatural. But hiding behind a tree is not a supernatural power.
It would not be,
but if I can make myself just disappear like magic, that definitely would be. Cool. All right, anyways, back to the story. His life is strange.
You don't say.
Yeah, no kidding. But he is loved and cared for by the ghosts and someone special. Oh, that's nice.
It is.
So he has this very unusual life, this very unusual childhood, but don't worry, he's not going to be eaten by the vampires or, and nothing bad will happen to him. He is loved and cared for by the ghosts and someone special. So this is another person, another resident of the graveyard. We don't quite know what is special about this person, but basically he kind of has a new family.
Yeah.
And that's what a family would do, what you would expect them to do, to care for their children and for their family members, for their loved ones. When we care for something, we take care of it. We make sure it's happy and safe and healthy and protected. It could be a person, like you care for your family and friends, care for your children. It could also be something that valuable to you. You could care for a piece of jewelry because it came from your grandmother, or you could care for a thing that you got because it's valuable and you want to protect it. You want to make sure nothing bad happens to it. So who is this other special resident?
Well, we learn that his name is Silas.
Hi, Silas. Okay. Who's Silas? Silas describes himself as neither living nor dead. Like a vampire, right? They're kind of living and dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think sometimes in stories they're called undead. They might look dead, but they're not. Kind of like a zombie too. I guess they're kind of living and dead. But anyways, this is how we would describe this person. Not quite living, but also not quite dead. Now, when we describe something, basically, we're making a picture, but using words. We're using words so that when you hear what I'm saying, the words I'm using, you can kind of draw the picture or see the picture in your mind. We use a lot of adjectives when we make words. It's big, it's this color, it's this size, it smells like this, whatever. If it's a place, you're describing what you would see if I had a picture, but I don't. Or maybe it's something you can't really see with your eyes. I could tell you what a new food that I tried. What does it taste like? Well, it's kind of like this and it's kind of like that. So you're using words and using references, talking about things that person knows, and using those words, they can kind of draw or make that picture in their own imagination so they have an idea of what you're talking about. Our example sentence would be, I would describe my brother as very tall and strong, but also very kind and shy. Okay. Interesting. He's like a gentle giant.
So Silas says he is neither living nor dead. Let's take a look at that grammar. So we use neither always with nor. It's like a double negative thing. It's used to say that a particular thing, it's not one thing, and it's also not another thing. It could mean it's something in between, or it could mean it's nothing, like either option. For example, we could say a snake is neither a bird nor a mammal. Or this dish is neither Japanese nor Taiwanese. It's not this, but it's a little bit of both. We can also use it to make the subject of a sentence and to say that what follows the neither nor part is not true for either thing. So I could say, neither Mike nor I come from the US. So this Silas guy, he's not a dead person. He's not quite a living person. He's sort of somewhere in between. He's a bit mysterious, but that gives him certain advantages.
That's right. I mean, think if the other people in the graveyard are all ghosts, they can't really walk around in the daytime. They'll scare everyone and stuff. So Silas can kind of live in both of those worlds. Here we get an idea of how that would work. It says he can leave the graveyard and make contact with the outside world. So he can go and do their shopping, for example, which lets him take care of practical matters.
Like the shopping.
There you go. So if one of the ghosts wants to put some money in the bank or get a new pair of shoes or whatever, Silas is the one who goes off and does this. I don't understand what's going on here. Anyways, he is the one who can make contact with real people or the real outside world. When we make contact with someone, basically we're communicating with them, we're interacting with them. If you pick up the phone to call someone, if you send someone a message and you're waiting for an answer or an email, you're trying to make contact with that person. And if they answer your call or call you back or write you back, you have made contact with that person. It could be physical, like by actually touching the person, or it could just be, as it more often is, just communicating with that person. Even if it's on the other side of the world, if you're chatting with your friend or just sending messages back and forth, you are in contact with that person.
And Silas does this to take care of kind of important business.
Going to the bank.
Yeah, or maybe someone's grave is kind of getting all messy and needs to get a message. Send somebody to clean it up.
I'd like new flowers, please.
Or it's getting too crowded. We need to do something about that.
Okay.
He takes care of this stuff. Now, take care of can mean the same as care for, to look after something. But here we're using take care of to mean to deal with something, to go and do something that requires a little effort or attention. Just get this job done, basically. And the things he's doing are practical things.
Okay, so what is practical? Well, something practical is something that happens in the real world or relates to real situations, real events. This isn't an idea, this isn't a dream, this is like, hey, what do you think if? No, this is happening, this is real, this is going on right now, okay? For example, I've seen people make pots out of clay, but I don't have much practical experience doing it. I've watched it, I understand the idea, someone explained to me how to do it, but I have actually done it with my own hands in the real world? No, that would be practical experience. You can learn something, but until you actually do it, you haven't gotten the practical experience of actually trying that action.
So Silas can go out there and actually, yes, doing the shopping is important.
Sure.
Maybe not for the ghosts, but what about nobody Owens? The article says here, this kind of going out and contacting the outside world, this is how Bod is fed and clothed.
Good point.
So here we're using the word clothe, it's cloth with an E on the end. It's a verb here, to put clothes on someone or something. You'll see in winter people clothe their dogs. They put a little jacket on them sometimes. You would just clothe your children to give them their clothes. You kind of clothe yourself, but we tend to say dress oneself. Clothe is basically to provide the clothes, maybe more than actually put it on them.
Exactly. But yes, in the morning, you wouldn't say, hang on, I'm clothing myself. I'll be down for breakfast in 2 minutes. You're getting dressed.
Exactly. So here's an example. The survivors of the boat sinking were clothed and fed by the people who rescue them. It kind of means if you clothe someone, they have no clothes.
Right.
But you provide the clothes they need.
Exactly. You might not actually be putting them on them, but at least they have them there to use. Very interesting story so far.
Yeah, who knows where this strange kind of story is going to go? We will find out tomorrow, but right now it's time for our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So the question is, nobody Owens is not the main character's name from birth. That's not the name he was born with. If you have a chance to name yourself, what will you call yourself?
This is a question I have never thought about ever in my life.
Never thought about picking a new name for yourself?
Not at all, no.
I don't have a middle name.
Oh, okay.
Neither mine.
Oh, I have too many. Do you want one of mine?
No, thanks. Because using the grammar from today, neither me nor my brothers have middle names.
Why did your parents think it was just not worth it?
Not necessary, really.
It really isn't, actually.
So, but we could choose them. I could choose one and add it to my name. I got to choose my Chinese name. Did you choose your official Chinese name?
Well, I kind of picked one that sounded like my name.
Okay,
that wasn't too strange. So have you actually thought about what middle name you would choose for yourself?
When I was a kid, I kind of liked Leo as a sort of a star sign thing. Never did it in the end. But I'm happy with my own name. I don't think I'd go around changing it at this point. I've used up all my good ideas on children. I don't
good point.
Name them instead of naming myself.
Absolutely. It's not really a big thing people would think about, but if you're going to be a celebrity, if you're going to pick a show business name,
a pen name for when I write,
or a writer's name, they often choose one. So maybe you could think about it and you can let your imagination run wild. How about you guys? If you could pick a brand new name for yourself, and don't change it to salmon so that you can get free sushi.
I thought about doing that.
Don't do that one. But if you could choose a better name for yourself that's not a fish, what would you call yourself?
Okay, well, have a think about that and join us again tomorrow for part 2. See you then. Bye for now.
Vocabulary Review.
Misty. Be very careful when you drive today. It's really misty. so it's hard to see clearly. Narrow. This road is too narrow for a car to fit. Only bikes and scooters can drive on it. Wander. Jack likes to wander around the shopping center and look at the stores. Describe. I haven't seen the movie, but Jenny described it to me, and I think I wouldn't like it. Practical. Jason doesn't have much practical experience, so it's difficult for him to get a job. Clothe. Jenny got all wet after the heavy rain, so her friend clothed her with a new t-shirt.
智慧小补帖
Creep. Graveyard. Resident. Supernatural.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net